So it looks like another potential Brexit deadline extension, which can only mean more frustration for the European Union. For more on how Brexit will affect the EU, I'm joined live from Miami by Remi Piet, Research Associate on Political Economy at the University of Miami. Good to see you again, Remi.
It's my pleasure, Rachelle.
So as we now know, the Prime Minister paused but didn't pull the deal after MPs rejected this fast-track timetable, potentially setting the stage for a general election. How is all this being received by the rest of the EU bloc?
Well, there's a certain sense of frustration from the EU leaders. Donald Tusk said that he would actually indeed recommend for an additional extension because the European Union doesn't want to be seen as responsible for a no-deal Brexit. But several countries, especially France, has been very clear to say that they would agree to a technical delay of a few days. Most likely this will be actually pushed after Christmas, but clearly the position is that there should not be any changes to the agreement itself. Now, let's be very clear on what happened today. For the first time, there was a positive vote from the House of Commons towards moving forward an agreement, but that's just an agreement towards ratification. That doesn't mean that it's been ratified. That means that it's going to be scrutinized and maybe a series of additional negotiation will happen, and that's what's been confirmed privately by a few MPs that were just more conscious about preventing general elections in the UK and wanted to get an additional delay to potentially bring forward another defeat for Boris Johnson in 2 or 3 months.
So Remi, barring ratification of the current Brexit deal, European Council President Donald Tusk suggested this new January 31st, 2020 extension. But what do both sides have to gain and lose by having this extension?
Well, here even 3 months, first of all, the delay is not that long. Especially since we've been for 3 years on these Brexit negotiations. But even if you look at recent history, the Treaty of Lisbon, the latest text that was actually ratified by the UK Congress, whether House of Commons and House of Lords, that took 5 months of different sittings for this to be approved. So 3 months, including the period of the end of year celebration, is going to be a tight schedule if you have ongoing negotiation in the different House of Commons. From the perspective of the EU, it's yet another delay that actually prevents the European Union to actually concentrate on some maybe more important issues, such as what would be the policies in terms of trade issues from the EU, issues of security, the position of the EU towards global conflict or position towards other global powers in today's world, and they have to yet again concentrate on a series of different summit and negotiations, waiting for the UK to ratify an agreement that has been for different versions already agreed by the EU leaders.
So then, as you mentioned, with Brexit essentially putting all these other things not on hold, but certainly a major distraction, just how costly then would a no-deal Brexit be for the EU?
Well, it would be costly for the EU, and that's why there will eventually be an agreement to provide another extension, but specifically on technical agreement and an agreement that the text itself would not be modified, but it would be even more costly for the UK. Here, absolutely, you have a situation from Boris Johnson calling a bluff for general elections, calling a bluff for a no-deal Brexit, because he does know that the impact on the UK economy would be much more important than it would be for European countries. From the perspective of European countries, there will be a blow to a no-deal Brexit. There is also a risk, if there's a different agreement, that the UK will actually engage into a race to the bottom in terms of regulations, wanting to turn into being a European Singapore that will provide unfair competition to other countries in the EU. So that's why it's so important for the European Union to maintain the basis of the agreements of the European Union as a whole, which is the single market, the clear regulation in terms of social and environmental regulations, and the fact that each country that has access to the European market has to abide to a certain amount of different rules. And that's why, to protect this, they will indeed agree to another extension, but making sure that there will not be a renegotiation to that new treaty that has been passing one specific hurdle today in Congress, but that actually is not out of the woods yet.
And Remi, just quickly, we know that we have seen companies shift operations away from the UK to other EU countries in anticipation of a no-deal Brexit, or essentially just to try and avoid the disruption. Which EU countries have really benefited the most from this?
What we're seeing is that the countries that actually benefit from it are mostly Germany and France, especially when you're looking at financial sector, banks that actually have been cutting jobs from the city in the UK to actually relocate, especially in Paris or in Frankfurt. You also see a series of different companies in the manufacturing sector that will take decisions into relocating inside the European market in case there's a no-deal Brexit, because that means that there will not be clear agreement on what will will be the future trade relationship between the UK and the European Union. That's why the political declaration, which is still up for grabs because it's not binding today, is so important in terms of trying to shape the relationship between the UK and the EU. And with a certain level of uncertainty, you are likely to see, more companies relocate into European Union countries and away from the UK because there's no certainty in terms of the capacity of that production to be clearing, export hurdles towards the European Union without high taxation.
Remi Piet, their research associate on political economy at the University of Miami. Thanks so much.